Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning or evening, depending on where you are. My name is Sumesh Malhotra, and I'm a principal engineer at Benu Networks. Today, I'm here to talk about how OSM has helped us in our virtualization journey. First of all, I want to thank HC and OSM communities for giving us this opportunity to share our experiences with open source MANO. If we can go to the next slide, please. I am an open source MANO champion in my company, and we have demonstrated to our customers onboarding of our VNFs using OSM as the orchestrator and a generic VNF manager. Our VNFs are based on Benu Networks' flagship product called SD Edge. What is SD Edge? Well, it is a fully virtualized software-defined edge for carrier networks that run in the cloud, edge data centers, or regional hubs. If you can go to the next slide, please. A picture is always worth 1,000 words. So the purpose of Benu Networks SDH platform is to help operators and service providers deploy services in a rapid fashion to their customers, whether it is managed home or managed business. The beauty of the platform is that it's the single code base can be licensed and configured to enable different network functions like virtual wireless access gateway or virtual broadband network gateway, or a simple carrier gate NAT or a device fingerprinting kind of network function. Our goal is to help service providers enable such services such as parental control, IoT security, device fingerprinting, teleworker, so on and so forth. On the left side bottom, we will see that our software runs on bare metal or hypervisor, meaning VMware or OpenStack, and recently also on Kubernetes as a control and user plane separated containers. On the right side, you will see that we have integrated with our partner Arista. We have taken their switch APIs and integrated it into our framework so that our service delivery framework can be used also on that hardware. We started transitioning from bare metal based solution to virtualized solution, I would say about 3 years ago. But in order to really demonstrate the potential of a virtualized solution to our customers, we needed a good MANO solution, right? And so began my search for the right MANO for us. Next slide, please. I'm sorry if you hear my dog barking in the background. These are the joys of working from home. Sorry about that. As all of us will agree that an operator's or a service provider's requirements for a MANO are different from a VNF vendor's requirements, right? So OSM fits nicely for both, but what does a VNF vendor really want? We want to showcase our VNFs to our customers, right? We want to demonstrate how easy it is to configure, monitor, and scale our VNF. And as a secondary requirement, we want a consistent way to do these things for our in our in-house testing too, right? So, okay, let's go to the next slide, please. And what we don't want, right? We don't want, number one, a super complicated installation, right? If I have to read a manual to install a software, well, I'm out, and I'm sure a lot of us are. For VNF vendor, we don't want very high compute memory and storage requirements from the MANO solution. Now, why do I bring it up? Because when I was evaluating a couple of years ago a bunch of MANO solutions, or rather trying to evaluate, we saw that some of the very popular ones had very high requirements for compute, as high as 40 CPU cores. That doesn't work for us. Especially for small VNF vendors, smaller companies, that doesn't work, right? So coming back to what we really want, those three pillars are configure, monitor, and scale, right? And guess what? We don't want to do too much work to get that going. We want to focus on our application. And I felt the OSM was a MANO solution that kept those things in mind, that they will have to support legacy systems that may never become netconf, restconf compliant. And I thought OSM was one of the very few MANOs who thought about that and gave that functionality. Yeah, we can go to the next slide, please. Now, this diagram, it is based on the HC-NFV architecture, right? You have the management entity on the right-hand side, and we have the hardware on the left bottom. And in the middle, we are showcasing our virtual network function and containerized cloud-native network functions. So it was November of last year that I attended my first OSM Hackfest in beautiful Lucca. What a great event, and I believe that was the last in-person Hackfest, and I certainly hope we can have face-to-face Hackfest sometime soon. At the time, at Benu Networks, we were working on containerizing our solutions. So I asked a question to the presenters, like, when will OSM be ready to orchestrate containers? Well, long story short, OSM was ready before us. So moving right along with the industry trends, so that's great. So yeah, coming back to those three aspects of configuration and monitoring and scaling, let's go through them one by one. And I also want to highlight that this was exactly also the diagram that VNF onboarding task force, they gave us a setup in the HC of Vim, and that was really nice, and that helped us a lot too. We can go to the next slide, please. So coming back to the first point, which is configuration, right? Anybody can do day zero config, so let's not talk about it. But for day one config is when the service really gets onboarded, the device really gets configured, virtual or physical. And I thought OSM did a really genius thing in something called proxy charms. So basically, without doing any code change to my legacy VNF, I was able to configure it using an Ansible script via a charm. So most of you know about it, and I think there's a session right after mine on this. So I won't really go into this line by line, but the purpose of this initial configuration was come up, SSH to the virtual network function that got created, and run this sequence 1 and sequence 2. Sequence 2 is a primitive called sinit, meaning service init. And obviously the code of this primitive is embedded in the charm itself, and which just ends up being a Linux shell script. It will call the Linux shell script, and it will go to our Benu domain controller in the Benu cloud and get itself configured, right? And obviously that IP address can change later on. If you have seen the OSM Hackfest demo and those hands-on sessions, you know how to execute these NS and level primitives, right? So that's how we got configured. The virtual network function is up and running. From a, so what's the next step from my point of view is to monitor it. Next slide, please. Then for this particular application, the two things that we wanted to monitor was tunnel count and subscriber count. What is tunnel and subscriber? Well, for our application, an access point ends up being a tunnel, and a device connected to an AP ends up being a subscriber. And we wanted to scale, or rather show to our customers that we can scale based on these parameters. And this was all the blob that I had to write in my descriptor. And again, a little bit code behind the scenes on the charm to execute a shell script to basically obtain these two parameters from my application. Simple, straightforward, and it works. And not to mention that both of these parameters I was able to see right away on Prometheus and graph them using Grafana. People like that. And know that I'm monitoring when a certain condition happens, I want to scale out. And next slide, please. And this simple scaling criteria will scale the VNF. What does it say? It says when the number of subscriber goes above 12,000, create another instance of this VNF. And when it comes below 10,000, you can delete that instance of VNF. And that's it. And we were done. We showed it to several people, and they're like, yeah, no, it's a real VNF. Just because it's a virtual machine, that doesn't make it a VNF, but you can show the monitoring and scaling that made it a VNF. But guess what? We did no code change to our legacy code for that particular network function. And that's pretty awesome. Next slide, please. Last but not the least, I want to talk about descriptors, right? And this was actually touched upon in the plug test 2 on the last day, that many times we talk to MANO vendors and they're like, yes, do you have a descriptor for me? And my answer always is, no, I don't have a descriptor. I have my requirements for you. I strongly believe that a MANO provider should have the tools to generate templates and descriptors automatically. And that was one of the excellent things about OSM, the command line to generate descriptors and the extensive example set really helped us. Uh, and that's all that I have today. If there are any questions.